Дорогие друзья, добрый день. Просим прощения за задержку. Немножечко мы технически здесь застряли. Я хотел бы объявить нашу последнюю лекцию в рамках лаборатории ReFormers Lab, которая проходит при поддержке парка Зарядье, Союза композиторов России и компании Yamaha. И последний лектор – это один из, наверное, главный саксофонист Хорватии, наверное, икона своего поколения в каком-то смысле. Он же композитор Гордан Тюдор. Он был в Москве на прошлом фестивале ReFormers и играл хорватский авангард. Не удивляйтесь, что он действительно существует, и он очень разнообразный, очень серьезный, очень много композиторов хорватских и далматинских, если можно так сказать. И Гордан, он пишет музыку не только для саксофона, он работает с театральными постановками и с симфоническими оркестрами. И вообще экспериментирует очень много. И сегодня мы подготовили предзаписанное интервью с ним, а также вы услышите в начале и в конце интервью несколько записей с его участием. Итак, Гордан Тюдор, Хорватия, специально для ReFormers Lab. Спасибо.
So, today we are within ReFormers Lab, and our guest is the most eminent saxophone player from Croatia, also composer Gordan Tüdor. We're very welcome. Yeah, so first of all, Gordan, you graduated from Zagreb Conservatorium, yeah, then from Conservatorium in Paris, and then from Conservatorium van Amsterdam. And the first question is, how is it to be both composer and saxophone player?
Well, thank you, Vitaly, first for allowing me to be in Moscow, at least online. I'm constantly remembering my last trip to Moscow, thanks to you, and I really want to come again because I think it's one of the most beautiful cities everywhere. So thank you first for this opportunity, and then thank you for your question. So how is to be a composer and a player of any instrument at the same time? I don't know. For me, it's kind of the parallel road since the beginning. So I was never just a saxophonist, or I was never just a composer. I immediately started both because I had some piano knowledge before I started playing saxophone, and I had immediately some outdoor music that I wrote as a kid with very poor harmonic knowledge, with very poor polyphonic knowledge. But I immediately started expressing myself as an author. So the saxophone is just, I think if I was an oboe player, I would still be a composer as well. It doesn't have to do with the saxophone. It's just that it's my personality. Some people like to conduct. Some people like to, work on doubling wind instruments, clarinet, bassoon, and saxophone. For me, this is the necessary way how to live my professional life.
Yeah, great. Yeah, why I'm asking, because few of the participants on this laboratorium, they're also performers and musicians, not only composers. And I know at least one person who is a saxophone player himself. Yeah, and but tell us more about your musical roots and how you became a musician, and how did you discover your passion for the composition?
Well, for the composition, I have to say it's in my high school. It's similar, like in Moscow, you have these conservatoriums, and in this high school, we have a serious harmonic lessons. And I think it's a copy of the old Soviet, method. So we have really strong theoretical subjects. And the moment I started having those, so the first couple of years were just saxophone and solfege. And after you have harmonic contrapoint, this old polyphonic music by Orlando Di Lasso and Jan Ockeghem and these Flemish polyphonists. I immediately fell in love with harmony. Harmony was my main goal is to solve harmonical problems, not melodical, not rhythmical. I'm a harmonical guy. So every composer has his. I think you have where you put your most, motivation towards a certain aspect, and for me that's harmony. I don't achieve always, but that's what I like. So I think the root of everything is harmony, and the root of my first compositions were mostly, it was mostly written by some kind of blues, maybe blues 12 bar, typical tonica, subdominanta, dominanta, very simple question and answers, because I had a band. So immediately started playing with a band before I even started playing saxophone. So I think this is this simplicity made me realize that I can also write. If I started with a fusion band or something, I would give up immediately. But in blues, it's kind of nice 12 bar, very simple, very classical. When you see it, it's very classical. It's very old music method. So I think the blues plus these harmonic changes where I tried later I found out there is chromatic modulations, there tonality jumps, then I discovered this is really fascinating, and then when you said about performers and players, I think, and composers, I wish I was a better pianist. I really wish. I think that's amazing tool for composers, and I'm sorry that a lot of my colleagues who are composers, they don't use piano that much anymore. Most of them are composing directly into the computer, and I have this old pianino Yamaha behind me, and every piece that I write, no matter how neoclassical or contemporary, I start always on this piano. It's very important to me, but I wish I had more, because I'm very limited with my technical abilities.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible that you have the blues as the first kind of experience, because we had the interview with Jakob Tervelhaus just recently, and he told the same words, because the blues was for him also the first musical experience.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
When I met him in Amsterdam, because as you know, we both studied there and we both love his music, and it was really funny because he had a really similar. Only because the only difference is that you and me, we are classical musicians also, but he jumped from a pop band to the classical composition. He never performed classical music. That's the only difference, but everything else was very similar and very familiar when we talked. So he had the same kind of this rock and roll drive in his music as well, that I don't like to show. I don't like to show that I had a band before. I don't like to show this pop side. I like my pop past, but I don't like to show it in my music.
Great. Do you believe in melody?
Absolutely.
Is it the core of your music? In a way.
On some pieces, definitely melody is important. I think the composition is just solving problems. It's like painting or sculpture. You can paint a different kind of Nevsky prospect, oil on canvas. You can approach it on 10 different angles. And you cannot say this picture is more Nevsky prospect than this. This can be completely, Kandinsky, like free, and this one can be like Chagall, and this one can be a very Monet impressionist moment. But it's just a matter of how you approach. Some pieces that I write, I approach from the melodic aspect. Some pieces that I write, I approach from the instrumentation aspect. Now I have a piece I'm writing for a wind quintet, a reed quintet, and Etno from Istria. We have this kind of sopile, kind of duduk, but very arrogant sounding, very nasal, and everybody is using these minor seconds and this dissonant, moment that they have. And I decided to write a post-minimal, East Coast, post-minimalistic music. You know why? Because I never heard these instruments in this kind of environment. They're always connected to the pastorala, to the bukolik, to the village life of the old Croatian village life. And I want to take this and put it into New York, for example, So it depends. I could have approached from the melodical aspect, but I have a feeling that a lot of people who did it before me, they already explored this melodic aspect very much, because it's a very basic instrument, very naive instrument with only octava range. I don't know if I can create a new melodical, but this band really liked my approach, my first drafts, because it's very rhythmical, and this instrument was never used, in like Steve Reich manner. It was never used like that. So I made a mission for myself, and I'm trying to solve the problem this way. It's just my decision, like anybody else's, Somebody else would decide differently.
Yeah. Great. And in your music, what kind of influence your Dalmatic, I would say, music and Dalmatic ethno music has. So, do you find this influence on your art?
I'm sure you're right. Dalmatic music is very vocal music. We are very good singers, not me, but the folk here are very good singers, and we are kind of the authentic expression is 6 guys singing without a conductor. It's called klapa. It's very basic harmonies, but it's very old and it's very necessary to our way of life. So I have this in my subconscious, definitely. But I think if I'm using it, sometimes I'm using it from a perspective. Actually, I used it once in a piece for accordion. Used it because they're now they're over killing this nice pure ethno music. You know, it's like Eurovision. If you watch Eurovision and then you see what they are doing to the ethno melos, they are destroying it with this over producing it, and this is kind of this Frankenstein of the. So I once did a piece called "May the Rock Be Thy Pillow." My rock be thy pillow, because there's this klapa song about this, and it's fake. It's fake traditional music. We are reinventing fake music. So sometimes I'm fighting back this way. So I'm like guerrilla composer. I try to fight back. These guys, they are destroying our heritage, and then I'm destroying them while they are destroying our heritage. So I have this, but I would not touch this folk music. It's not intentionally. Subconsciously, it's there. I'm sure it's there, but not intentionally, because it's folk music. It's my grandfather sang this with his friends. It should not be written. It should not be taught in the universities. It's just, it's like drinking wine. You know, it's a matter of how life is led here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You already mentioned about some pieces of art, like paintings. But what are your sources of inspiration?
I don't know. I really don't know. Sometimes it's just a word my kid says, just one word. For example, this winter I had a huge problem with a piece for a string orchestra, and she said just one word. And I immediately got inspired, and I finished in 4 days. And I had 3 weeks of just hitting the wall. So sometimes it's nature, sometimes it's a painting, like you said, or a book. And sometimes it's a dream. It's funny. Sometimes it's a dream. Maybe most of the time the original idea is a dream, but then when I write it down, I'm not sure in the morning what did I wrote down, and I don't know. It's a very hard question, good question, but it's not easy for me to give you an honest response, because it's never repetitive. It's always something else.
Yeah. It's a complex as well.
Yeah.
Very good. And now it will be a kind of tricky question. I started a conversation about how to be both composer and performer. And what is for you as a composer to have a contact with the performer while you are writing the piece, while you're composing, and while you are refining the piece? Is it necessary to have this contact, and is it also a source of inspiration for you to be in contact with the performer or performers or orchestra or any kind of ensemble you are writing for?
It's actually, I think, a very good and very smart question, and I think it's very necessary in these days, because it's not that difficult to ignite a contact with the performer. It's very easy now with all these possibilities, technical possibilities. So my teacher, when I was a student of composition, he said that every piece I should write for an orchestra should be as I'm writing it for Boston Symphony or Berlin Philharmonic. And of course, maybe if I was living in Moscow or if I was living in Amsterdam, but if you live in Croatia, and I decided to live in Croatia, I really wanted to come back. Sometimes I write for bigger ensembles. I cannot write for them as if they were Berlin Philharmonic. I could, but the result would be, I have to make a compromise. I don't have to, but I chose, again, like I said, I chose to make a compromise. So that's considering big ensembles. But if it's chamber or soloists, I always know to whom I'm composing, and I'm always extremely satisfied because I write for a person. It's like tailor, like tailor suit. You can buy a great Hugo Boss suit that's confection, and you can go to a really good guy that somebody recommended and really get a tailored, I don't necessarily work with a performer. I always ask for 8 or 10 exemplary pieces. For example, if I'm writing for harp, I wrote a piece for harp. I don't know a lot about harp, of course. I mean, I learned, but it's not an instrument I'm familiar. So I ask her, give me 5 or 6 Takemitsu and these pieces that I can, just learn from. Then you listen to this huge period of research, and then you write something that you think it will suit her. But I always keep contact with performers, and I'm not a boring guy. I'm not trying to suffocate them, but I'm very happy to know that somebody will perform. For example, if I knew you and Maria are going to perform, I would really work on the whatever I desire, because I know the result would be extraordinary, And also, if I'm writing for a kids' graduation concert in high school, I have to know that I cannot write like for professional duo. It's something you have to take into the consideration.
Yeah, very good answer. We're coming to the knowledge. What is the knowledge for composer for today's composer? I mean, as you already mentioned, when you write for some new instrument, you have to take as much information as you can, and kind of dive into this world of the sound. And but what do you think about the knowledge that composer should give and should use before he writes the piece, and in certain style, for example, or crossover style or whatever? What do you think about this?
It's also very interesting. I never thought about it, but maybe I take a lot from, like, classical. I have a lot of a library full of orchestration books by Rimsky-Korsakov or by Tomasi, by this Serbian had amazing school in the 70s, Belgrade Academy. They had a great orchestration book, polyphony book, so I have these books, obviously, that a lot of my predecessors used. So it's nothing brand new. It's from the 50s or 40s, or Korsakov is even younger. Tomasi, you have Berlioz' amazing book by Hector Berlioz, about the orchestration and about how to use instrument. This is all knowledge. But I think with having all this available by just one, click, just a good Google search, just if you can Google something smart, not just use it for dumb stuff, but really you can get to the knowledge in 10, 12 seconds, I think. So I think more that composer now needs than knowledge is flexibility. It's some sort of flexibility. Sometimes I come into the project with the intention of writing a certain music, and after doing research, I end up doing something completely different. And this is the flexibility that I'm letting it take me sometimes. I'm not eager, I will do it this way, or I'm sometimes, if I do a research about a contrabassoon and I came with these ideas, and maybe I will get 4 or 5 pieces that will Shurhoff piece by solo contrabassoon and stuff like that. And you will just end up doing something that you never dreamt of doing. So I think this kind of open-mindedness is what composers today should have, and also what I like about some composers, one piece is in the style of minimalist music, other piece is spectral, third piece is very neoclassic. Why not? Why not? It's the time of when you had to be, either Stravinsky or Boulez. This is not a case anymore. Today Louis Andriessen died, great composer of our time. He died today, and Rzewski died the other couple of days ago. Frederick Rzewski, American composer, minimalistic, amazing. So we are losing these great names, and this new generation. I mean, it's inevitable. People are old, and it's the way of life. But the new people are not so concerned about styles, and this is what I like. And this is what I also try to do. I'm not a slave to a certain style. I know that these harmonic ideas are always what kind of gives me my signature. Some pieces can be a little bit more rhythmical, some pieces can be more impressionistic, some pieces are expressionistic. So this openness is combined with knowledge. I think this is what makes a 21st century composer possibly interesting composer. That's my answer. It's long, but maybe that's my answer.
Yeah, thank you. We all know that music is the kind of what is this word? Abstract art. But do you consider using some social aspect in your art, or I don't know, something that happens today, or something that happened or made influence to your life, or to your I don't know, to your feeling of the world, maybe in your country or in general, whatever you feel important.
I'm one of those composers. I don't like art when it's actual. I'm not a fan of actual art. I would never mention Corona in any of my pieces in the next 35 years, because I think the world doesn't need I'm an escapist. I like to escape with the music. I don't like to be. Sometimes if I'm making a commentary that's ironic or sarcastic commentary with these people who are destroying our folk music, that's not being actual. That's just making fun of them, earning money in a bad manner. So this is the most actual I can get. But I'm not a fan of actual painting, actual video art, actual, when there was these migrants coming to Europe, almost every video art of this generation of video artists was about that. I'm a big filmophile, so I go to a lot of festivals. Every Italian movie, every Spain, it was about Lampedusa and about, of course, it's something that should be mentioned in a documentary, documentary style. But like immediately go and jump and create scenarios that are. I'm not a fan of this. I'm a fan of more personal. Deal with your demons. I don't want to deal with the world's demons. I don't care. I'm dealing with my own stuff.
Yeah, it's very honest. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it becomes like a news. Today you see this news, and after a few days you don't react on them.
Yeah. You get numb. You're like whatever. Yeah. So that's why I think art should stay. Yeah.
All right. Just for our audience, there is a question about. We are saxophone players together, and I don't need to explain you where are the saxophone in the history now. I mean, composers wise. So we have kind of golden age, for my opinion. and a lot of composers writing at the moment for saxophone, solo saxophone, and in different ensembles in chamber music. What do you think would be the future for the saxophone if we go in 50 years? Because still we don't have any masterpiece as a saxophone concerto. There are a lot of concertos already existing, but we don't have one, like Tchaikovsky violin concerto or something like that. What are the strong and weak points of this situation with the saxophone repertoire, do you think?
So you think now is the golden age?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Me too. I agree 100%. I think that our students won't play better than our colleagues now. I think maybe technically they will, but not in a musical sense. I think this is the best saxophonists are living now, I think.
Yeah, but also composing wise.
Yeah, I understand completely. No, I agree. But I think the big question is now, who will continue in Paris with the same saxophone class? I think in the world of saxophone, it's not the biggest issue, not the most important, but it's one of the issues that can determine maybe the future of the instrument in the French, at least, and French-orientated states. Of course, in Amsterdam, nothing changes. In Croatia, nothing changes. In Moscow, it doesn't matter. But this is kind of, it always was considered. Paris was considered, the school that dictates the fashion of the also composition-wise. And what you spoke about, what you said about we don't have a Tchaikovsky or we don't have Copland, we don't have anything. We don't. I'm. It's going to be a little bit now too intimate because we are two saxophonists talking, and maybe the composers do not understand. But I'm completely holding this against our French predecessors. I think Marcel Mille, who was the teacher in Paris Conservatory for a long time, just in the middle of Second World War, until the middle of the century, and he was working with these guys. He was working with Messiaen. He was working with he was recording Jolivet and Millot and whatever, Francais and Saint-Saëns and Poulenc and all these guys and Honegger. I can just continue now, and we don't have anything. Elisa Hall did some of the French guys of this era, Caplet and Debussy, as you know. So it was not him, and this was his job. This was a French guy's job, because in Moscow, what you are doing now, I had now a list of 15 very, very interesting composers writing for saxophone. And also in Croatia, we are not a super force. But since my teacher invented Croatian saxophone in the end of the 70s, they started, until now, no major composer failed to write for us. And we took over, and in our time, from my Papadopoulos quartet, no major composer missed the chance to write for us because we are boring them. Come on, write. So when we will die, our future generations will have a lot of material from our time. And this is what we miss from the first 50 years of the 20th century. And this is where we could have maybe a masterpiece. This is this time is lost. This is the lost time. So I'm happy that new generations are trying to write a masterpiece, but never a piece written in the 2017 can match with the good Rachmaninoff number 2, or Tchaikovsky or Sibelius or whatever you want. So we just failed this chance to have a huge and famous concerto. And
this is very, very, very interesting. And now we jump over from the composer conversation. I want us to come back And what we are doing now, we are trying to attract attention to the saxophone, because this is what we are missing: the attention and the interest to this instrument, and also the possibilities of the instrument, and etc. Yeah, but talking about the composing and talking about the writing the pieces, I just want to mark one more time that the intent should come from the performer or from the composer, or both ways. What is your opinion about that?
I think that it works in every kind of scenario. Sometimes it's from the orchestra, sometimes it's from the festival, sometimes it's from the performer, and sometimes it's just the composer deciding he wants to write something for the, So it can be from both, every possible aspect. The only thing now that we should have is like more people writing saxophone sonatas, saxophone concertos, like you said, because everything else we have plenty. We have plenty of great music from this era, really plenty. The most we miss is a good sonatas, like closed forms, pure forms, and a good concertos. That's maybe the only thing, because we have amazing solo music, amazing music with electronics. We miss also some chamber, of course. But look at the Saxophone Quartet. The repertoire is vast and beautiful. They are maybe the most interesting chamber ensemble now there is the Saxophone Quartet. It's very, very well positioned in the world of classical music. Very well. But what we miss is I'm constantly in the juries for clarinet and flute because I'm teaching at the university. And then every time I hear Poulenc, I remember this sad story that we almost had Poulenc sonata because Londex came and he just died, and they had a meeting. So maybe he would write the saxophone sonata. We miss this kind of big forms. So no matter who starts the talk about writing, if you come to the composer or composer come to you, or some other aspect like a organizer of a festival, it's never important. The most important is that it stays on with generations. This beginning is like a luck, is a little bit of chance. You have to have a good luck in the beginning, but at the end the result always wait for everybody who wants to play it. That's what I like, and that's what I was expecting John Adams' concerto, to create for us, and it did in a certain way. But it's really good concerto, but we still miss what you said, a masterpiece.
But as you see, every time when there is a chance to have this masterpiece, there always a personality behind, like Sigurd Rascher, like Eliza Hall, like Timothy McAllister, of course. Yeah. So, and I think it's kind of duty of nowadays saxophone players to grab the composers in a way, and to ask to write as much music as they can, and we will see what will happen, in the decades afterwards. But we have to do that.
And that's actually not our job at all to make now to sort it out. What you said, the decades after us will sort it out. Ours is just to ask as many composers as possible, so the generations in 100 years can choose from more than we had choose from the 50s or 60s. That's it. We just have to give them more to choose from. And we are doing that. Yeah. I'm very proud of our saxophone community everywhere. We are really doing that.
Great. Okay, let's come back to composer.
Yes.
Composer life. What is the beauty to be a composer for you?
The beauty to be a composer. Well, I don't know. I like to be alone when I'm writing. So that's something that you cannot be alone when you're playing, because you need audience. It's very important aspect of being a player. And then solitude is very important aspect of being a composer. So I like to have, I enjoy being in front of audience, but I also enjoy just being alone at my piano with a, so I like this solitude moment of composition. And what I also like sometimes is that I do a lot of applied music. I write some music for movies, not movies like Hollywood movies, but like small experimental documentaries. I do a lot of theater, music for theater, and that's actually a great rest exercise for my ego, because it's applied music. It's not about me, I have to fit into the director's idea, and it's a great exercise. And I use a lot of this knowledge that I learned working with some really good directors. I use this on my students, and I use this on my composing as well. Sometimes composers want to have every second important, and it's dramaturgy doesn't work.
As we let's imagine that nowadays there is kind of in the air feeling that all the music is written, kind of, everything we are doing, it's kind of rebuilding, reformatting, or the word.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
what would be your advice for composers in this angle? Is it correct or is it not correct? Or should young composers, think about it, or should they neglect it? What do you think about this?
I think that young composers should do whatever it takes for them to be satisfied, happy, and fulfilled. So if they want to neglect it, if they are very into being a rebel, or a fast forward thinking breaker of all the rules, I encourage them to be that. If they are more dreamer, more Weltschmerz, more a romantic type of person, like Goethe, or Dostoevsky or something like that, I encourage them to be that. If they want to be a neoclassic, I'm happy that I'm not a composition teacher because it's, when you're teaching saxophone, it's so easy. It's so easy because it's very exact the way. But imagine you are a painting teacher or a composition teacher, or it's so personal. It's so personal. You can touch their form of it. You can touch but even modulation now you cannot touch if you are talking about outdoor music, because you can break all the rules that you had from the classical music. From the time of Haydn, everything is breakable, absolutely. If you see minimal music, it doesn't have any sense what they are doing harmonic-wise. If you can show this to Haydn, he would, he would be mad, because the rules are not there. There's no tonica dominant. They're jumping, and imagine if you show them Boulez's music. What about that? Because you can be a Boulez, you can be a Bernstein. They lived in the same time. I like music of Boulez and I like music of Bernstein. It's whatever works for you. But I'm very happy to know that this century allows kind of a cohabitation of all different. It's what makes me happy.
Yeah, thank you. And we have studied abroad a lot, and what do you think would be what the strong and weak points for composers to study abroad and to go abroad and to get international experience, or to be kind of domestic but unique in a way? Of thinking and
But that's also another great question, actually. And also you can look in the history, for examples. You had composers like, I don't know, who was it? Was it you know, Bach or somebody who was not Bach. Bach stayed always in his church. He never moved around, and you had these guys like, I don't know, it was Telemann or somebody who was, you know, traveling. Corelli, they were traveling all Europe to look what is going on, what's happening. So in a history, you had both these like state of mind. So, and I would ask a question: can you be alone in your country with all this technology? You know, you can check on internet and see what's going on in San Francisco. You can what's going on in Dubai, what's going on in. But so, can you actually be an island anymore? Can a person be an island anymore? So I think that it's great when I was studying outside, because of course I came from Croatia where I had built some renommee, and then I came to Amsterdam. Nobody cared about my renommee, and I'm very good. I like this environment. I don't like environment when everybody's tapping my shoulder, you know. Then I created some renommee in Amsterdam. Then I went to Paris. Then again, nobody there knew. So I like this situation when I'm not expected to do something, that I can make a mistake and make something good, and people would judge me as objective as they can, you know. So I like this with living abroad, and that's something that I try to live by these still now. I try to live by these kind of, you know, I don't want to be a boss in my city, because it's this city, it's just a village considering comparing to other cities. So I'm always trying to be 1 foot abroad. You know, I check all the concerts. I travel a lot. I try to, like I said, I do the research. I see what my colleagues are working. I'm a big fan of all the contemporary composers out there. I cannot write like them because I don't hear it in my head like that. But I'm a big fan, especially when I play this music. I will die for this music, but I'm not writing like that. But it doesn't matter, you know. I defend their ideas as I'm defending my ideas when I'm writing.
Stay in tune. Finally.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm very happy to perform experimental music on saxophone, and I will try to explain everybody in the audience the meaning of it. But I would never compose like that because it's not my personality. But I don't have a problem with that. As a musician, my taste is much wider than as a composer. You know. I don't know.
What is the finding your identity as a composer?
I don't know. I really don't know. I wanted to write a humorous music at the beginning. I wanted to be a Dadaist. That was my first, after I graduated, I wanted to be a Dadaist because the world was kind of, there was wars around us, and there was all this kind of, you know, this fake news and blah, 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 and everything was serious, and I wanted to create something very Dadaistic. So my first pieces were Dadaistic. So every time I hear those first my pieces, I know it's mine, and a lot of people know it's mine because I had all this Dada connection. And then I decided not to do it anymore. And then I lost my identity. And I think I have these clusters of identity. You know, this piece from 2014 and this piece from this year are kind of together. This piece from 2007 and this piece last year are kind of together. I have this kind of, I don't know, clouds of identity. My identity is like maybe every composers. Louis Andriessen had an identity. You can always completely know that it's his piece. Jakob ter Veldhuis, he has absolutely an identity, you know. So some people can manage and can do that, and some people, I think, like me, are just traveling around to trying to build some kind of fragments of identity. I don't know. That's my case. Maybe I.
Mm-hmm. Never stop searching. Kind
of. Maybe I'm too young. You know, maybe in 10 years, or 20 years, 30 years, I will just destroy 70% of my opus and everything that's going to be, that I'm going to acknowledge as my opus. Maybe this will create a very clear, identical sense, you know. But for now, I'm just, like you said, I'm trying to travel as many paces as I can, solve as many problems as I can.
Спасибо большое. Мы прослушали лекцию Гордана Тюдора. Неспроста закончили произведением в джазовом стиле. Это его личное произведение, которое он написал недавно. И, как вы видели, там Джеймс Картер выступал, один из самых главных джазовых саксофонистов мира. А также на сцене были, наверное, все главные тоже саксофонисты. Мы с вами прощаемся до 8 часов. Все, кто нас слушает онлайн, пожалуйста, в 8 часов подключайтесь к онлайн-трансляции нашего заключительного концерта лаборатории. Всем большое спасибо.